When a formidable centre-forward like Malcolm Macdonald names the 4 toughest players he's ever faced, you listen. There was no one quite like Supermac. He was the swaggering, supremely confident goalscorer who arrived at Newcastle United in a chauffeur-driven Rolls Royce. He was a cultural phenomenon of the 1970s, a man whose confidence could easily be mistaken for arrogance. He even engaged in pre-match trash talk before the 1974 FA Cup final, which only served to motivate Liverpool to victory. But this video isn't about that swagger. It's about something far more interesting: deep respect. With his career cut short by a knee injury at just 29, Macdonald has had time to reflect. To understand why his list of toughest opponents matters, you need to understand who he was on the pitch. Malcolm Macdonald was a force of nature. He was quick, powerfully built, and possessed a ferocious shot that terrorised the finest defences in England. His aerial prowess was equally fearsome, making him a complete attacking threat. He became the top scorer in the First Division with 2 different clubs, Newcastle in 1975 and Arsenal in 1977. That's a rare achievement that speaks volumes about his consistency and quality. His entire philosophy was simple. Football had one purpose: scoring goals, and everything else was secondary. The numbers tell their own story. At Newcastle United, Macdonald scored 95 goals in 187 league appearances between 1971 and 1976. At Arsenal, he added another 42 goals in 84 league games from 1976 to 1979. These weren't just any goals. They were goals that won matches, goals that defined seasons, goals that made him a legend on Tyneside and a hero in North London. He remains Newcastle's 5th highest goalscorer of all time, a testament to his enduring impact on the club. Macdonald's swagger was part of his game. But what do you think? Is that kind of confidence missing from today's football? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you love stories from this golden era, make sure to subscribe. So, who could possibly challenge a man so single-minded about scoring? His answers reveal a fascinating insight: a goalkeeper, a defender, a winger, and another striker. These 4 choices show what he truly respected. Each represents a different form of challenge, a unique test that pushed Macdonald to his limits and forced him to evolve as a player. First on his list is Pat Jennings. Before they were teammates, they were adversaries. Macdonald represented England's attack, whilst Jennings guarded Northern Ireland's goal. Their international encounters were tense affairs, with Macdonald constantly probing for an opening against the giant keeper. These matches were battles of wills, with the striker's determination meeting the goalkeeper's unshakable resolve. Jennings was a unique specimen. He was a big, well-built and physical goalkeeper whose presence alone could intimidate forwards. His game was defined by unflappable composure and an almost casual dominance of his area. He famously gathered high crosses with a single, massive hand, a technique that became his trademark. His positional sense was unrivaled, and he seemed to read the game several moves ahead, anticipating danger before it materialised. Everything changed in the summer of 1977. Arsenal manager Terry Neal signed Macdonald from Newcastle for a club record fee. The following year, Neal made another bold move by bringing Jennings across the North London divide from Tottenham Hotspur. This transfer shocked the football world, as Jennings had been a Spurs legend for over a decade. Together, they formed the spine of a revitalised Arsenal side, a team that would reach 3 consecutive FA Cup finals between 1978 and 1980. The team was brimming with Irish talent, creating a unique chemistry that would define Arsenal's era. For a striker whose entire identity was built on scoring goals, the daily training sessions at Highbury became the ultimate proving ground. Every shot, every header, every turn was a personal duel against one of the world's elite goalkeepers. These weren't friendly practice sessions. They were intense competitions where neither man wanted to concede an inch. A striker's confidence is forged in his ability to consistently beat goalkeepers. The club's premier goalscorer was pitted daily against its premier shot-stopper. This wasn't mere practice. It was a relentless, high-level competition between 2 masters of their craft. Macdonald would try every trick in his repertoire, every angle, every type of finish, Jennings would respond with saves that seemed impossible, denying MacDonald time and again. The psychological impact of this daily battle cannot be overstated. To be consistently denied in this controlled environment by Jennings's unique combination of size, agility, and intelligence would have fostered a profound and deeply personal respect for his ability. This daily, uncompromising test of his own limits was, in its own way, the toughest challenge of all. Second is Bobby Moore. In the landscape of English football, Bobby Moore occupied a sacred space. He was footballing royalty, the 1966 World Cup winning captain who had lifted the trophy at Wembley. His game was a masterclass in anticipation and timing, a cerebral art form that stood in contrast to the era's more physical enforcers. Whilst others relied on strength and aggression, Moore used his mind as his greatest weapon. MacDonald's reverence for Moore was forged during their time together in the England squad. When MacDonald made his full international debut against Wales in May 1972, he lined up alongside the legendary captain. For the young striker, it was a moment of profound significance, sharing a pitch with a man he had idolised. A year later, MacDonald was on the pitch as Moore equalled the national record for appearances. It was a symbolic moment connecting one of England's established heroes with one of its brightest emerging stars. MacDonald later recalled a single, unforgettable evening. Sitting with Bobby Moore and Franz Beckenbauer, chatting about football is one night he would never forget. This memory places Moore in the most rarefied of atmospheres alongside the giants of world football. The fact that MacDonald treasured this memory decades later speaks to the profound impression Moore made on him. It wasn't just about Moore's ability on the pitch. It was about his presence, his aura, his understanding of the game at its highest level. Interestingly, MacDonald named the Derby County partnership of Colin Todd and Roy McFarland as the best defenders he ever played against. This seems contradictory, but it's not. Todd and McFarland represented the ultimate physical test, a coordinated and bruising assault on a centre-forward. They worked in perfect harmony, covering for each other, doubling up on attackers, making life miserable for opposing strikers. Moore was different. He was the individual intellectual challenge. Despite being a player whose own style was defined by explosive power and pace, MacDonald recognised that the most formidable barrier wasn't always physical. Moore didn't need to kick you or outmuscle you. He simply read your intentions before you'd fully formed them yourself. He would intercept passes that seemed safe, make tackles that appeared impossibly timed, and position himself so perfectly that shooting opportunities simply vanished. Moore was the puzzle that neutralised Supermac's power and pace by simply outthinking him. For a striker as intelligent as MacDonald, this must have been both frustrating and deeply impressive. Third is George Best. There can be no ambiguity in MacDonald's assessment of George Best. When asked to name the single best footballer he ever faced, his verdict was swift and definitive. I played against the likes of Eusebio and Franz Beckenbauer, but nobody could touch George Best. This is not mere praise. It is the ultimate coronation from one of the era's most confident and accomplished players. To place Best above Eusebio, the Portuguese legend, and Beckenbauer, arguably the greatest defender of all time, is a statement of extraordinary significance. Best's pace with the ball was extraordinary. MacDonald, himself known for blistering pace, admitted that even he had trouble keeping up with him. For a player like MacDonald, whose speed was one of his defining attributes, this admission is staggering. It reveals the almost supernatural quality of Best's ability. Best wasn't a direct opponent to be marked or a striker to be contained. He was an elemental force. A footballing ghost who could drift through games and then, in a flash of brilliance, decide them single-handedly. He could beat 3 defenders in a phone box, as the saying went, and make it look effortless. Adding warmth to this professional admiration was genuine friendship. George was a good friend, MacDonald stated, and he was a lovely, warm man who loved his football. This poignant reflection reveals the man respected and liked by his peers. It provides a powerful counter-narrative to the often tragic public story of Best's life, the struggles with alcoholism and personal demons that would eventually overshadow his genius. But to those who knew him, played with him, and competed against him, Best was more than his troubles. He was a man who genuinely loved the game and brought joy to everyone who watched him play. George Best represents the one player whose genius forced Macdonald, the ultimate pragmatist, to reconsider his entire footballing philosophy. Macdonald's worldview was rigid. The purpose of football was to score goals, and everything else was secondary. Yet, here he was, placing a winger known more for his sublime artistry and dribbling above every other player he had encountered. This creates a fascinating conflict. If only the end product matters, why is the greatest opponent a man who embodied the beauty of the journey? The only logical conclusion is that Best's talent was so overwhelming, so singular, that it became the exception to Macdonald's rule. He was the one player who could not be measured by the simple metric of goals scored. His genius existed on a different plane entirely. Best could do things with a football that seemed to defy the laws of physics. He could change direction at full speed without losing control. He could dribble through entire defences as if they weren't there. He made the impossible look routine, and the routine look spectacular. In Best, even the most single-minded and results-driven professional was humbled, forced to acknowledge that sometimes football transcends statistics and becomes pure art. Fourth is Kenny Dalglish. The selection of a fellow forward is perhaps the most intriguing of the four. This was a rivalry between two kings, Supermac of Tyneside and King Kenny of Merseyside. His inclusion suggests a different, more profound definition of what makes an opponent tough. This wasn't about physical duels or tactical battles. This was about legacy, about greatness, about the measure of a career. The stage for their rivalry was set long before Dalglish arrived in England. Following the 1974 FA Cup final, Liverpool forward Kevin Keegan cited Macdonald's pre-match trash talk as a key motivator for his team. Liverpool comprehensively defeated Newcastle that day, and Macdonald's words came back to haunt him. This established a history of high-stakes competition between Macdonald and the club Dalglish would come to personify. Their rivalry reached its peak in the 1977-78 season. Macdonald was leading the line for Arsenal, whilst Dalglish had arrived at Liverpool as Keegan's replacement. The pressure on Dalglish was immense. Keegan had been Liverpool's talisman, and replacing him seemed an impossible task. Yet Dalglish made it look easy. The League Cup semi-final on February 7, 1978 provided a perfect example of their competitive dynamic. Macdonald fired Arsenal into an early lead with the kind of clinical finish that had made him famous. But Dalglish responded, scoring a crucial equaliser for Liverpool, who won the match. It was a clash of titans, trading decisive blows on a major stage. However, the true nature of their rivalry extended far beyond individual matches. During Macdonald's peak years at Arsenal, Dalglish's Liverpool was the dominant force in English and European football, winning the European Cup in 1978 and the league title in 1979. They were simply unstoppable, a machine of relentless efficiency and brilliance. Whilst Macdonald was winning individual scoring titles, proving his prowess as a goalscorer, Dalglish was collecting the major team honours that define a player's legacy. For a competitor as fiercely ambitious as Macdonald, this must have been difficult to accept. He was doing everything right, scoring goals at an incredible rate, leading his team's attack with distinction, but Dalglish's team was winning everything that mattered. The toughest opponent was the one who set the standard of success he was desperately chasing. Dalglish wasn't just an opponent for 90 minutes. He was a rival in the newspaper headlines every week and in the history books every season. Every time Macdonald opened a newspaper or turned on the television, there was Dalglish lifting another trophy, scoring another crucial goal, cementing his place among the all-time greats. The relentless pressure of a direct contemporary achieving greater team success represented the ultimate professional challenge, a constant battle for legacy that never truly ended. The contrast between their careers became even more pronounced as time went on. Whilst both men were prolific strikers with similar attributes, Dalglish's ability to elevate his teammates and integrate seamlessly into Liverpool's system set him apart. He wasn't just a goal scorer, he was a complete forward who could create, assist, and control the tempo of matches. This versatility made him indispensable to Liverpool's success in a way that Macdonald, for all his brilliance, never quite achieved at Arsenal. Malcolm Macdonald's choice of his 4 toughest opponents is far more than a simple list. It is a map of the challenges that define greatness at the highest level of sport. Each name represents a different dimension of excellence, a unique form of mastery mastery that tested Macdonald in ways that statistics alone could never capture. Pat Jennings was the test of daily perfection, the teammate whose brilliance demanded excellence every single day. Bobby Moore was the test of footballing intelligence, proving that the mind could be more powerful than the body. George Best was the test of confronting pure, unquantifiable genius, a reminder that football could be art. And Kenny Dalglish was the test of legacy, the benchmark for ultimate success. This specific quartet reveals more about Malcolm Macdonald himself than any list of bruising centre-halves ever could. It proves that behind the brash, confident Supermac facade was a sharp and insightful student of the game, capable of recognising and respecting greatness in all its forms. In celebrating these four titans, Macdonald not only defines his own career, but pays tribute to an age of legends. Which of these four players do you think was the toughest opponent? Let us know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.